Since Captain Ibrahim Traore took power in September 2022, Burkina Faso's economy has grown from just under $60 billion to nearly $80 billion, according to IMF estimates. During the same period, economic growth has more than doubled, inflation has fallen dramatically, and public debt has declined as a share of the economy. A few years ago, very few people outside West Africa had heard the name Ibrahim Traore. Today, he has become one of Africa's most talked about leaders. To some, he is a patriot who is transforming Burkina Faso and standing up to foreign influence. To others, he is simply another military ruler whose popularity has outpaced reality. The question remains, is Traore a true legend, or is he just another myth? Traore has governed while battling a persistent jihadist insurgency, surviving multiple coup and assassination attempts, and navigating increasingly strained relations with France, the country's former colonial power. Yet despite these challenges, his popularity has continued to grow, not only within Burkina Faso but across much of Africa. Supporters often portray him as a new generation of African leadership, drawing comparisons with the revolutionary former Burkinabe president, Thomas Sankara.
Forces combattantes qui mènent un travail colossal sur le terrain et qui permettent qu'aujourd'hui nous pouvons nous retrouver ici pour communier au nom.
In this video, we'll put politics aside and focus on the numbers. What exactly has Ibrahim Traore done since taking power? Have his policies delivered meaningful economic results? And what lessons, if any, can other African countries learn from Burkina Faso's experience? By the end of this video, you'll have the facts, and you can decide for yourself. Before we look at the economy, it's important to understand why Traore came to power in the first place. On September 30th, 2022, a group of military officers led by Captain Ibrahim Traore overthrew the government of Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba. In his first public address after taking power, Traore justified the coup almost entirely on security grounds. So what exactly is his economic strategy? If you look closely at Traore's policies over the past 4 years, a clear pattern begins to emerge. Rather than introducing dozens of unrelated initiatives, his government has focused on a handful of priorities. Together, they form the backbone of his economic strategy. You can think of that strategy as having 5 main pillars. The first pillar is resource nationalism. Burkina Faso is one of Africa's leading gold producers, but for many years, critics argued that the country wasn't benefiting enough from its own natural resources. While gold exports generated billions of dollars, much of the value was captured elsewhere through foreign ownership, overseas refining, and limited domestic processing. Traore's government set out to change that. One of its first major steps was creating a state-owned mining company, giving the government greater control over strategic mining assets. Traore also revised Burkina Faso's mining policies to increase the state's share of revenues from large mining operations. At the same time, the government moved to discourage the export of unprocessed gold, encouraging more of the country's mineral wealth to be processed within Burkina Faso instead. The idea is simple. Rather than exporting raw materials and allowing other countries to capture most of the profits from refining and manufacturing, Burkina Faso wants to keep more of that value at home. The second pillar is industrialization. For decades, many African economies have relied heavily on exporting raw commodities while importing finished products at much higher prices. Traore's government has repeatedly argued that this model limits industrial growth and job creation. Its response has been to expand domestic processing. Perhaps the most symbolic project is Burkina Faso's first national gold refinery, currently under construction near Ouagadougou. Once completed, the refinery is expected to process more of the country's gold domestically rather than sending it abroad for refining. The same approach has been extended to agriculture. In December 2024, Traore inaugurated a tomato processing plant in Yako with the capacity to process around 100 tons of fresh tomatoes per day into tomato paste. Instead of exporting raw agricultural products or losing harvests due to inadequate processing facilities, the government hopes to create more value within Burkina Faso itself while supporting local farmers and creating new industrial jobs. The third pillar is agricultural modernization. Agriculture remains one of Burkina Faso's largest employers, meaning improvements in farming have the potential to affect millions of people. Recognizing this, Traore's government has invested heavily in mechanization. Thousands of tractors, power tillers, pumps, and other pieces of farming equipment have been distributed to agricultural producers with the aim of increasing productivity and reducing dependence on manual labor. At the same time, the government has expanded irrigation projects and accelerated the construction and rehabilitation of dams and water infrastructure to make farming less dependent on increasingly unpredictable rainfall. The fourth pillar is infrastructure development. Economic growth doesn't happen without roads, bridges, electricity, and public infrastructure. Recognizing this, Traore's government has invested in the rehabilitation of existing roads while launching the construction of new highways linking major towns and cities across the country. These projects are intended to make it easier for people, goods, and services to move across Burkina Faso while creating employment for local engineers, contractors, and construction workers. The government has also emphasized carrying out more of these projects using domestic capacity rather than relying exclusively on foreign-funded development programs. The fifth pillar is regional integration. Following deteriorating relations with ECOWAS after the military takeovers in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the three governments chose a different path. Together, they established the Alliance of Sahel States. Beyond security cooperation, the alliance aims to strengthen regional trade, improve economic collaboration, and reduce dependence on institutions that the three governments argue no longer represent their interests. Taken together, these five pillars reveal a consistent philosophy. Increase national control over strategic resources, process more goods domestically, strengthen agriculture, invest in infrastructure, and build closer economic ties with neighboring allies. The question, of course, is whether these policies have actually worked. To answer that, we need to look at the numbers. Economic data, while never perfect, offers an objective place to start. Let's begin with the size of Burkina Faso's economy. According to estimates from the International Monetary Fund, Burkina Faso's gross domestic product, or GDP, stood at just under $60 billion in 2022. By 2026, that figure is projected to reach almost $80 billion. That's an increase of more than $20 billion, or roughly 34%, in less than 4 years. In simple terms, Burkina Faso is producing significantly more goods and services under the Traore regime. But a growing economy doesn't always mean ordinary people are becoming better off. Population growth can make GDP look impressive even if individual incomes barely change. That's why economists also look at GDP per capita. This measures the average share of economic output per person and provides a better indication of whether national prosperity is keeping pace with population growth. In 2022, Burkina Faso's GDP per capita was approximately $829. By 2026, IMF estimates place that figure at around $1,320. That's an increase of nearly $500 per person, representing growth of almost 60%. This figure suggests that economic growth has outpaced population growth during this period. Another important indicator is the economic growth rate. The GDP growth rate tells us how quickly that economy is expanding. When Traore assumed power in 2022, Burkina Faso's economy was growing at around 1.6%. The latest IMF estimates place growth at approximately 4.9%. In other words, the economy isn't just bigger than it was, it's growing much faster as well. What's particularly interesting is how Burkina Faso compares with some of Africa's largest economies. Its recent growth rate is higher than those projected for countries such as Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa. It still falls behind some of the continent's fastest-growing economies, including Uganda and Ethiopia, but considering Burkina Faso's ongoing security challenges, the improvement is noteworthy. Another area where Traore's government has seen progress is public debt. Government borrowing isn't necessarily a problem. The real question is whether debt grows faster than the economy itself. One common way of measuring this is the debt-to-GDP ratio. When Traore took office, Burkina Faso's public debt stood at approximately 59.2% of GDP. By 2026, that figure is projected to fall to around 48.8%. A lower debt-to-GDP ratio generally means a country's economy has become stronger relative to the amount it owes. Part of this improvement appears to reflect economic growth, while it may also indicate reduced reliance on borrowing. Compared with several larger African economies, Burkina Faso's debt burden is relatively modest. For comparison, South Africa's debt-to-GDP ratio is projected to be close to 79%, Kenya's around 72%, and Egypt's close to 87%. Another figure that directly affects people's daily lives is inflation. Unlike GDP, inflation is something people experience every time they visit a market, pay rent, or buy fuel. High inflation means prices rise quickly, reducing the purchasing power of households. Low inflation doesn't necessarily mean prices are falling. It simply means prices are rising more slowly. According to IMF estimates, Burkina Faso's inflation rate has fallen dramatically from 13.8% in 2022 to around 1.5% in 2026. That's a decline of nearly 90%. In practical terms, prices are still increasing, but they're doing so at a much slower pace than they originally were. Taken together, these indicators paint a picture of an economy that has become larger, grown faster, accumulated relatively less debt compared with its size, and experienced much lower inflation. Traore's government has pursued a very different economic strategy from many of its predecessors, one focused on greater control over natural resources, industrialization, agriculture, infrastructure, and regional cooperation. Whether that strategy will continue to deliver results over the next 5 or 10 years remains to be seen. But after looking at the evidence, it's easy to understand why Ibrahim Traore has become one of Africa's most talked about leaders. Now it's over to you. Do you think Burkina Faso is heading in the right direction under Ibrahim Traore, or do you think the internet has exaggerated his achievements? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more videos on economics, infrastructure, and development. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.